The Porsche 911 GT2 Rs. Is it just me, or is there a little whiff of aftermarket tuner about the way it looks?
It's not just you, is it?
No.
It's a busy looking device, but you can solve that by having it in black. If
Yeah.
you want it in black, you don't see all the carbon that's going on there.
Before we go any further, the GT2 Badge, can you tell us a little bit about what it is, what it stands for, why it's so feared? How far back does it go?
Goes back to 95, doesn't it? Well, late 94, early 95, when Porsche wanted to homologate a car for what was then the top line of tin top endurance racing. The lower regulations were BPR, weren't they? And they created a car called the 993 GT2, which was effectively a 993 turbo, which had big swollen wheel arches which were riveted on, and that car became iconic. It won a lot of races. It raced against McLaren F1s in period. It was 430 horsepower, but it didn't weigh an awful lot. It was a special thing. It was one of those sort of Jürgen Barth specials that came out in the back of Porsche Motorsport, and no one quite knew how they made them. There weren't many. I think there were about 60 cars, 12 were right-hand drives. That was a genuine homologation racing car. It was replaced by the 996 GT2. That came along in 2001, wasn't it? That was the first production car ever to have carbon ceramic brake. That wasn't a homologation car. That really was a 996 turbo, missing the front drive shafts, with a few extra bits and bobs and a bit more poke. And they did a facelift of that car, which actually had a load more power. That got to about 480 odd. And that had no traction control and really quite ropey Michelin tyres.
So that's where is that where the Widowmaker nickname
Yeah, the
came
996 was the Widowmaker, really, because the 993 GT2, not enough people drove them or owned them to really understand them. They were very, very Larry cars, but I thought the 996 was Larry. And 997, again, continued the theme. It really was a 997 turbo, missing the front drive shafts, with a screwdriver in the boost solenoid. That was it, really. And then they made this car called the 997 Gt2 Rs, and that was more serious than we'd expected. A power output beginning with a 6, when a 911 turbo over the period had about 530. So it had a load more power, two-wheel drive. That really was a Widowmaker. That car was Larry, and now we've ended up here.
It sort of set the bar for a new level of lunacy, and then this thing cranks it up another step, but it's kind of what we'd expect, given the 997 was so unhinged.
Well, I'm not sure it was what I expected, because I think it's more. What's always been the case with the GT2 is it's never felt like an afterthought, but it's always felt like they just take the engineering that's available to them from what they've done with the GT3 RS of the period, the normally aspirated car. They throw a bit of it at the car, and they take the turbocharged engine that's available, maybe tweak it a bit, and there you go. It's never been the car that they use as the figurehead of what Porsche Motorsport can do. Whereas this one is. This now is very much Porsche saying the best we can do is through a turbocharged engine, and that's quite strange because normally they want the normally aspirated cars to do that shouting. 700
horsepower, rear-wheel drive, hand on heart, is it too much?
No, it's not. If you turn everything off and it's wet, it's way too much. It's silly. You can't really hang on to it. But the systems are so good. The way that they calibrate these systems is so clever now that if you leave them on and you've still got some tyre tread depth at the rear, the car's fine. The question to ask is, could you sell this car without traction control? No.
Which brings us on to the lap time. Oh, it's quite a special time, isn't it? Now, there's a bit of magic going on because it's not on the board at the moment. That's because we're talking just before you record it in the studio. So 113.4, did that surprise you in any way?
No.
It's just like, 113.4, top of the list.
Seriously fast car. Is it quick? Does it feel quicker than a 675 LT? Yes. I think the 675 probably has a more helpful chassis because it's mid-engine and for all the obvious reasons, but the power delivery of this thing is extraordinary.
I know the internet's going to be screaming now. They want to see the 720S, see if it can get
Will
up
a 720S take care of it? Might do. Might be very, very close, but it was too cold. So we will run the 720S to find out.
You've got to think the 720S is probably a few tenths quicker than a 675. That's how McLaren work. They need to keep moving forward. So it'd be close, wouldn't it?
It would be, very, very.
Now the thing that keeps playing on my mind is, where does this leave the 911? I can't see how 100 more horsepower and more downforce could improve this car. Where are the gains going to be made in the future?
I'm not sure it's a 911 specific question, that is it? It's for all performance cars. I think right now, cars like this and the Performante and the 488 Pista that's coming, they reek of car manufacturers enjoying the last of these pre-hybrid times. This is them all saying, this is what we can do. We know that there's not going to be any more purely gasoline-powered performance cars coming. So this is it.
Let's
so
knock it out of
enjoy
the
it.
park.
This is, quite sadly, this is the end of an era, and I think they're showing us what they can do. But I think power outputs could continue to rise. The problem is the weight's going to start rising as well.
Yeah, so you strap some electric motors onto this thing and you add another 150.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you could probably have a car like this with 800 horsepower, but it's going to weigh 1,600, 1,700 kilograms.
Yeah.
And then I'm not sure they're quite as clever at that point. Oh, what a wonderful car.
It is a special thing. Finally, one word to describe this car.
Scintillating.